In the 1960s, Lucia Lulu, working as a waitress in a small bar in Candaba, left her city to pursue work in Manila. While she was transitioning, Lucia met a police officer by the name of Aniano de Vera, a man who was already married. Regardless, the two instantly fell in love and entered a common law marriage, soon Lucia giving birth to a child. For work, Lucia started a restaurant/nightclub/cocktail lounge. While managing a family and her business, Lucia abruptly disappeared in the summer of 1967. It is unknown whether or not her family reported her missing, as she was known to have lovers outside of her marriage. Later in May of the same year, newspapers were found in a trash can in Malabon. Wrapped in the newspapers were human body parts, 2 legs belonging to a woman. Both of the legs had been cut in half. A severed hand had been found days earlier outside of a barbershop. Initially, it was thought that the legs had been connected to the hand. However, this theory was later disproven due to the difference in decomposition rates between the body parts. Not even a day later, a human torso with the arms still attached was found near a bridge. Both the torso and the severed legs were later identified as belonging to Lucia. Due to the clean cuts, the police concluded the killer had to be someone familiar with knives. Either a surgeon, a pre-med student, or a butcher. All lovers of Lucia were gathered up and questioned. The first 3 had verifiable alibis. However, the 4th and final suspect turned himself in, stating that he had a mental blackout but had memories of himself strangling Lucia to death. And with that, the case was solved. That is, until 3 days later when he retracted his statements. Even with the retracted statements, police found blood under the suspect's bed as well as a blood-stained hammer. Curiously, the police received bomb threats to let him go while he was in custody. He eventually was, and the case went cold. Then in 2003, a book was published by a man named Steve Hodel. Steve Hodel's book covered a near similar case which occurred in the United States in 1947, the Black Dahlia. The prime suspect in the book? Steve Hodel's own father, Dr. George Hill Hodel. It was suspected by Steve that his father also committed the murder of Lucia. His father had been in Manila during the exact same time of the woman's death. Despite the revelation, the case still remains open. 30 years later, a similar case occurred. In 1993, Elsa Santos Castillo, who worked at Apex Motor Corporation as an assistant personnel manager, ran into Stephen Mark Weisenhunt. Stephen, originally from San Francisco, began an affair with Elsa, who was also already married. A few months later, Stephen invited Elsa to his house, telling his driver Demetrio to pick her up. She never arrived. With no word from her or Stephen, the driver simply went home. Before I go any further with this, I'd like to give you a chance to support this channel by buying the novel The Junkyard Kids on Amazon. Following the story of a mentally unstable outcast, we dive in a brutal world of murder and homelessness. After our protagonist and his younger brother team up with 3 other homeless misfits, the group seeks shelter in a deserted junkyard. One night, 2 criminals enter the junkyard, one killing the other as our group hides in the shadows. In a turn of events, the protagonist kills the murderer in self-defense. Rather than turn themselves in, the group decides to dump the bodies in a river. Fearing they'll be caught, they all make plans to escape the city. In the middle of their attempt, they find clues to the identity of the city's inactive serial killer. The same serial killer who murdered the main character's parents and caused him to become homeless in the first place. At this point, the protagonist abandons his plans of escape, navigating his way through the city to seek his revenge. Little does he know, the serial killer is one step ahead of him. If this book sounds good, look out for the thumbnail at the end of this video. It'll bring you to a sample reading narrated by me. And if you buy the book and enjoy it, consider leaving a positive review on Amazon. You may just see your review featured in one of my videos. With that being said, let's get back to the story. 2 days after Elsa disappeared, Stephen confessed to Demetrio that Elsa had died from Bangungot, sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. Demetrio urged Stephen to have her body sent to the autopsy. At this point, an autopsy would have been impossible according to Stephen. Stephen, not wanting to arouse suspicion, had already done the rational thing by cutting the corpse into pieces and was now asking Demetrio to help him put the body parts into black trash bags. Something anyone would do when they hadn't murdered someone. Demetrio agreed, wanting to prove his loyalty to Stephen. The two of them then drove around the city, discarding Elsa's body parts. The next day, Demetrio alerted the authorities and led them to the spots where the body parts had been dropped. Once an autopsy was performed, it was found that Elsa had died from 3 stab wounds to the chest. Even then, Stephen still kept up his initial claim that Elsa had died from Bangungot. Fortunately, the judge saw through this, noting it didn't make sense for Stephen to cut up the body. Stephen was sentenced to life in prison, but was deported to the US after serving 19 years. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking the video to help it out in the algorithm. Also, if you're interested in the book mentioned earlier, click the thumbnail on screen to hear a sample reading of it. That's all I have for now. Until next time.